Now then, Vinyl Monkey again, last one before Christmas I guess. Wanted to get this one in just to finish off 1974. This is my North American version. Apologies if this is a bit below the pretty low bar that I set for these things anyway. I've been a bit out of it this week with some sort of bug or other, but anyway, I'll do my best. And yeah, this is my top 10 North Americans, and then I just want to say a little bit about what is coming after that. But so I'll crack on. I'm not going to go through all the ones I didn't count because I wasn't that surprised. It was hard to pick a number one. I could have picked any of my top 4 as a number one this week, I think, but it wasn't hard to set most of them aside. Apart from this fella, I just want to say a little bit about Mr. Rundgren, Todd Rundgren, who had this LP, this double album, Todd, out in 1974. He previously, perhaps his 2 best known works preceded this one, and I don't know, in some ways I wanted to try and get Todd Rundgren in, not least because my other half, she's a great big Todd head, seen him several times live, had all his music, has been right into Todd right since way back into the early 70s, and I know that there are many Todd heads around the world who really do appreciate this guy and his music, and he's no doubt a brilliant musician. He's renowned as a producer, although it's sometimes the productions that means I don't really get it. But and anyone who was partly responsible for the production of Bat Out of Hell, of course. But anyway, I'm not gonna go on. I don't want to be negative so near Christmas, but I just struggle with Todd. I just can't get it. I can't warm to him. I find his guitar solos, technically brilliant though they are, to be a bit, they just don't do it for me. They're just a bit cold, and his albums tend to be so diverse, different sort of sounds and styles, that it just makes it difficult for me to ever get into them. So I haven't included it, but I do need to give him some sort of honorary mention, I think. So let's get into my top 10. At number 10, this is Johnny Bristol. This is Hang On In There Baby. I think this is Johnny Bristol's first solo album actually. He was already well known as a writer and producer in Motown circles, particularly Diana Ross and lots of other big Motown names. He wrote some really well known and brilliant songs for. It's said that he already drove a Rolls Royce before he made this album, but these show why he's such a great songwriter. The lovely songs on this album, sung with authenticity, a really nice smooth production, sort of a style somewhere between Isaac Hayes and Barry White. I mean, he hasn't got the Barry White sort of bass or sort of tones, but it's that sort of style. Lovely stuff, particularly the title track. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Hang On In There Baby. But nice album. Johnny Bristol, Hang On In There Baby, my number 10. My number 9, this is Little Feat, Feet Don't Fail Me Now. Southern, swampy, funky rock, great stuff. This is it's piano based, it's sort of got a bit jazzy New Orleans sort of sound behind it, but it's just great funk all the way through this, particularly on third track, Skin It Back, brilliant stuff. Singer and writer Lowell George used to be in Mothers of Invention. A few of these band members used to be in Beefheart's Magic Band, and you can sort of tell with the sort of fusion-y sort of styles that they bring to this. It's just lovely stuff. My number 9, Little Feat, Feet Don't Fail Me Now. My number 8, this is the brilliant but mad, over the top, zany, weird, demented, inventive Sparks. Yes, Sparks, the Rail Brothers, Ron with his deadpan sort of looks and style, and his Charlie Chaplin or Adolf Hitler moustache, whichever way you want to look at it, and Russell, the flamboyant singer. Probably most famously known, certainly over here in the UK, for their single which preceded this, came off their previous album, which was earlier this year, which I haven't got, Kimono My House. I'll have to pick that up somewhere, but that single, This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us, of course, well known for that. But this follows on in that style. It's just totally different. There's Something for the Girl with Everything is great. Something for the Girl with Everything, yeah, great track. I'm not sure whether that was a single, actually. It might have been. But this is just really, really clever stuff. I mean, it's said that Queen, and I don't like to go on about Queen, because I don't really get Queen or like Queen, but it is said that Queen listened to these two albums and basically stole the ideas and style and built their career out of it. But these are much cleverer, they're much more subtle. It's sort of keyboard led generally rather than guitar led rock. It's got one of the great covers, which I think sums up their style actually, where you've got these mad brothers sort of being kidnapped and driven off at speed on a speedboat in the front, and in the back of an old Humber car on the back. Brilliant stuff. So that's my number 8, Sparks, and the album is Propaganda. My number 7 is Big Star's second album. I think I featured their first album a couple of years before this. This is their second album, Radio City. But by this time, one of their two frontmen, Chris Bell, had already left, and Alex Chilton was the main songwriter and singer for this album, as the band become a three-piece. But this is lovely power pop. Sort of sounds somewhere between the Beatles and the Byrds, I suppose. But there are loads of rough edges around it. It's sort of uneven, a little bit off kilter musically sometimes. They sound like just a brilliant bar band, which is my sort of favourite place to see a band and experience a band, really. Great tracks all the way through it. Very influential band, although I missed them like many others first time around. The track September Girls, fantastic. It sounds like Teenage Fan Club would go on to sound 20 years or 20 plus years after this. But so that's my number 7, Big Star, Radio City. My number 6, what an album this is. This is the Blackbyrds. This was inspired, this is 6 students basically from I don't know, the West Coast University, it was the Howard University, anyway, an American university, whose music tutor was Donald Byrd, the legendary jazz trumpeter, and he inspired them to form this band, and they named themselves using his spelling of his name. I love the cover of this one as well, actually. It's just, I'll just show you, it's simple in a way, but it's the band running along an airport runway and sort of jumping up in the air as if they were trying to take off. But it's also got little blackbirds, or probably crows, on top of the title there. And I just think it's a really nicely designed album. I love looking at that, just for the photography as much as anything. Yeah, so the Blackbyrds, yeah, this is jazz funk fusion. I think one reviewer I read called it sort of proto-disco. You can sort of feel that early disco sort of, you can sense that early disco sort of feel to it. I mean, they're all brilliant musicians and they're all great tunes. Donald Byrd gave a couple of them, and the band members shared the writing of the rest. The track Blackbird's theme on here actually flirted with the pop charts. I think it got in the top 30 in Britain and maybe in the top 10 in America. But it's just a brilliant, funky, it's not too heavy, it's not too difficult, but just superbly done. It's been sampled apparently by many hip-hop artists later on, although I'm not familiar with those. But that's my number 6, and that's the Blackbyrds, Flying Star. My number 5, sorry if I'm in the wrong order, is Bob Dylan's Planet Waves. This is, I think it's Bob Dylan's only official studio album that he made with the band, you know, the band, i.e. Robbie Robertson, Richard Manuel, etc, etc, Rick Danko, Levon Helm, Garth Hudson. And it's got a really relaxed, free, sort of almost joyous sort of sound to it. I mean, it sounds really spontaneous. It sounds like the relationship between the singer and the band is just, well, it probably was probably the best relationship he's ever had with the band, with those guys. It's also got a slightly sort of shabby feel, but some great songs. It's a really enjoyable listen. It is one of the lighter, more joyful Dylan albums, I think. I've got to question whether there's really a need for two versions of the brilliant track Forever Young, and neither of them are my favourite version actually, but of it. But anyway, another great Dylan album, Planet Waves, and that's my number 5. My number 4 is Tom Waits, Heart of a Saturday Night, and I think this is a real step on. This is Tom Waits' second album, and I think it's a real step on from his opener, Closing Time, although I think many people have those in the reverse order, but I just really enjoyed this one. It's more jazzy, it's more painterly, I think, sort of painting the sort of images that he would go on to explore over the coming years. It really established Tom Waits' persona as a sort of creature of the night, explorer of the underbelly, the dark side of America, and just great songs. I mean, there's a couple on there, Diamonds on My Windshield, for example, where it's essentially Tom Waits rapping his poetry to background sort of light jazz music, which are just brilliantly done, and then the gorgeous title track, The Heart of a Saturday Night. But this is a beautiful, evocative album. Absolutely love it. Heart of a Saturday Night, Tom Waits, my number 4. My number 3 is, and there are some people out there who are, you know, annoyingly they're in almost every of my top 10s. They crop up every year because they're so prolific and so brilliant during this period in the 70s. Elton John was one of them. Stevie Wonder is another. Called Stevie's classic period, I suppose, right from 1970 right through to the end of the 70s. Just one brilliant album after another, and this one is Fulfillingness First Finale, which is slightly different from some of those around it in that it's more reflective, it's gentler, it's more tender, I think, than and maybe a little bit less upfront, sort of funky, although there is that stuff in here. It follows on from a serious car crash he'd had, which I say had been fairly, I think he'd been hospitalised for a while, and maybe that led to that more reflective, you know, talking about relationships rather than talking about some of the sort of socio-political issues that had dominated his previous LP, Inner Visions. But this is just another brilliant classic album. I think this is one of that grows on you as well. It's a sort of, maybe you're not familiar with some of the tunes, but it has got the funky You Haven't Done Nothing, which is another attack on Richard Nixon, and then it's got the beautiful They Won't Go When I Go. But yeah, lovely record. Fulfillingness First Finale, my number 3. And then my top 2. I mean, bizarrely, these two artists did have a relationship with each other at some point. I'm not sure whether it sustained all that long, but they were in a relationship at some point. They are both Canadian, and my number 2 is Leonard Cohen's New Skin for the Old Ceremony. And this is Leonard Cohen's 4th album. I mean, he didn't start losing his way into his 30s, but this is his 4th album. It's much more musical than his first 3, in that there are much, you know, there are more instruments used in it, and Leonard actually sings more, perhaps, rather than sort of performs his poetry than he has in the previous few albums, but neither of that is any bad thing. There's still plenty of space for his absolute genius, clever, intelligent lyrics to shine through. And I mean, it's funny when you listen to these top tens and you're pitching very different sort of artists and listening to them one after the other. But Cohen's lyrics absolutely just shine through, and yeah, obviously he's a poet. He maybe spend 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months polishing a song where somebody else might, knock it out in an hour, and it's more about the sort of chord changes or the melody or the rhythms or whatever. But with Leonard it is about the lyrics, but this he's got a beautiful sound around that as well. He's got the fantastic Chelsea Hotel, about his little tryst with Janis Joplin in the Chelsea Hotel. Lover, 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 absolutely love that. And then one of my favourites, There Is a War. There is a war between the rich and poor, a war between the black and white, etc. But also there is a war between the ones who say there is a war and the ones who say that there isn't. Just one of many, many brilliant lines on this album. One of my favourite Leonard albums. If you haven't watched my video on Leonard Cohen albums, maybe talk a bit more about it. Maybe talk a bit more about it on there. But for now, that's my number 2, New Skin for the Old Ceremony, Leonard Cohen. And so my number 1, the other Canadian. This is Joni Mitchell, Court and Spark. And this again is just brilliant writing. Songs exploring relationships and trust within those relationships and honesty, and about decisions you've got to make in relationships. And it's just, as well as ever with Joni Mitchell, it's a blend of folk, pop and jazz, but this one is perhaps less folky, which her previous albums have been, and less jazzy, which her forthcoming albums have been. A little bit more poppy, a bit lighter in musically, but not lyrically. I mean, still lyrically brilliant, genius stuff. This is, I think, Joni Mitchell's probably most successful album commercially. I think my favourite tracks are probably the first 4 tracks on side 1. Including the second track, Help Me, which is a really gorgeous track, which did go on to be a sort of semi-hit single. I'm not sure how far up the charts it got, but it did something in the charts. And yeah, a lovely album. Maybe my favourite, I think Blue's probably my favourite Joni Mitchell album, but it's certainly up there with one of her best. This guy, David Hepworth, in this little book about, it's called A Fabulous Creation, how the LP saved our lives. It's a general book about the sort of history of the LP from Sgt. Pepper's through to the invention of the Sony Walkman, I think, which he felt killed it off. But he does describe this particular Joni's album, Court and Spark, as one of only 2 albums that could truly be called works of art from 1974. Interestingly, the other one I haven't got. I'll have to look it up, Randy Newman's album from that year. But anyway, rambling on, that's my number 1, Court and Spark, Joni Mitchell. Okay, so all for me to say is thank you everyone for listening. Thanks to those who contribute. I do enjoy hearing your views and having a little bit of a brief conversation, albeit online. This will be my last of the years for a while anyway. I may go on to the later 70s later on, but I'm going to have a break at Christmas, and I've got 2 projects on the go. Basically, there have been requests from people who watch this channel. One of them's from a friend of mine who is a Van de Graaff generator freak, a band I never ever got into. I think I heard them once way back, didn't like it or didn't get it first time, and sort of wrote them off, and I've never heard anything from them or Peter Hamill hardly since. And he asked me if I'd, as someone new to Van de Graaff generator, if I would review them, and that's going to take some serious listening, so I did agree to that. I hope it doesn't spoil me Christmas. And he's brought her, I can't even lift it hardly, an absolute bag full of Van de Graaff generator and Peter Hamill albums, all the way through from their start in the late 60s to their breakup in 79, I think. So that will be a major project, so I'm going to take my time over that. The second project is someone asked or suggested that I do a video on best double studio album, so that'll be interesting and diverse, I guess, as well. So I might get into that at the same time when the generator get a little bit too much for me. So anyway, thanks again. Hope you all have a good break over Christmas time and all that. Alright, cheers.